All right. A very good morning, good afternoon, good evening to all our viewers from different parts of the world joining in for this session. Very warm welcome to each and every one of you. Thank you for being here at Billion Dreams 2023, the largest return to India hiring event and conference for NRIs. It's with great honor that I introduce our distinguished keynote speaker for the day, Mr. M R Rangaswami, who's the founder of Indiaspora, a leading nonprofit organization dedicated to untying the Indian diaspora, uniting the Indian diaspora for a stronger, more interconnected global community. MR is a visionary, entrepreneur, investor, corporate eco-strategy expert, community builder, and a philanthropist. Over the years, he has garnered numerous accolades for his outstanding contributions. He's received the Influential Leaders Award in 2015, the Asians in America Award in 2016, and the prestigious Global Service Award from the Canada-India Business Council in 2020. His remarkable achievements also earned him a spot among CRN's top 25 technology executives. Under his leadership, Indiaspora has achieved significant milestones, including hosting a successful G20 forum in New Delhi recently. Today, he will be speaking about global leaders, local impact, the power of the diaspora in India's growth story. Without further ado, here's the man himself. Over to you, MR.
Thank you, Avinash. Good to be here, everyone. Welcome. Again, I just want to share my journey, the journey of Indiaspora, and also what the opportunities abound in India as well. I had started this organization in 2012 when the diaspora was just getting going in many different countries, especially in the US. And we had many different organizations already existing, as you know. There are ethnic groups, there are entrepreneurship groups, and other groups. But we felt there was no one group that united the entire diaspora. It was an all-inclusive community of not just CEOs and entrepreneurs and VCs, but also included doctors, lawyers, academics, artists, and really the greater community of the diaspora. Just to give you a little bit of history on the diaspora, there are about 30 million of us who live outside of India. So it's the largest diaspora in the world. So this is a huge group. And the migration happened in many different waves. The early migration happened when the British colonialists, took Indians to many of their colonies to be workers. So a lot of Indians in the 1800s and early 1900s went to a lot of the British colonies to work. Then post-independence, there was another move, but this time it was much more people going to study, people going to get education, people looking for business opportunities and the like. So really you have to look at the diaspora in two different waves, if you will, or two different segments. One, the early ones who were forced to move to other countries, and then the more recent ones in the past 30, 40 years who went on their own volition to study and find better opportunities throughout the world. So if you look at the overall diaspora of 30 million, there are 5 or 6 countries that really host most of the successful ones. It's the US, Canada, UK, Singapore, UAE, and Australia. These account for the usual 80-20 rule, the 5 or 6 countries that have 80% of the success, the wealth, the job creation, and so forth. Those are the countries that Indiaspora is involved in at the moment, is to really bring together the successful diaspora to be a force for good. And what do we mean by that? What is a force for good? That means we get involved in philanthropy, in giving back, seva, as the ethos of our culture tells us, for millennia. So what we want to do as good global citizens is to be giving to countries we live in, but also taking a look at our homeland as well. So with that is how we established Indiaspora 11 years ago. And again, it's grown over time to have chapters in all these countries that I mentioned. And we do a lot of different programming. So there's There's programs around philanthropy. For example, during the COVID crisis in India, the Indian diaspora raised in 1 month $15 million to send to India for migrant food relief, for oxygen, infrastructure, and so on and so forth. So we get involved very actively in terms of giving. We also get involved in taking delegations to India, taking delegations to the different diaspora countries. So what happens is Indiaspora connects people of the diaspora in the US to Canada, to the UK, to Singapore, to UAE, Australia, and many other countries. So by connecting this diaspora to be a force for good, we can help India in many different ways, whether it's remittances, whether it's investing in India, whether it's starting companies in India. The diaspora is very, very actively involved. In fact, a big number for all of you to register in your minds is in 2022, the Indian diaspora remitted over $110 billion. Yes, $110 billion to India. This is a huge sum of money. India's foreign exchange reserve now stands at 600 billion. So 1/6 of that money keeps being sent to India every year, and it's increasing in value. And it's more than the foreign direct investment all the other countries and governments and professional investors put into India. So this is a very big source of money coming into India. This money not only goes to feed families of people, but it also goes in forms of investments, buying real estate, opening companies, investing in public stock markets, and so on and so forth. So the diaspora is helping India contribute to its success. So recently, Indiaspora was a designated organization by the Indian government, and under that auspices, we had the G20 forum a couple of weeks prior to the big G20 summit that happened in New Delhi. We had 300 delegates and leaders from 26 diaspora countries. So we had people as far away as South Africa and Australia and Colombia and Mexico and Suriname and many, many countries. And we actually had a hall of flags where we displayed all the flags from different countries that were participating, and they were all part of the Indian diaspora. And our job in this G20 forum was to discuss how the diaspora can contribute to India's 100th birthday that will happen in 2047. So we took a long range perspective of how we can help India. And this is in many different aspects of the country, how we can help India mitigate climate risk. So we had climate action sessions, entrepreneurship, artificial intelligence, healthcare. How do we help the next generation of young people in India? Tremendous dialogue and tremendous interaction between the diaspora and Indian leaders on how we can help India get towards its 100th anniversary, when India can be a very, very large power in this world. India is already the fifth largest economy, but soon it can become the third largest economy. Its GDP can reach 10 billion in short order. So looking at all this stuff, I think I want to talk to this audience, all of you, about the opportunities in India. What happens and what will happen in India? Right now, India is a $3 trillion economy. So it's a pretty substantial economy, but it's growing rapidly. It's the largest growing economy in the world, large economy in the world, and soon to become 10 billion, $10 trillion. So what does that mean in terms of people looking to go back, diaspora looking to go back either permanently or to take a job opportunity in India? Opportunities abound in many, many, many sectors. So for those of you interested in the infrastructure space, India is building airports, ports, roads, tremendous infrastructure in utilities, in factories. There's so much investment going on all across India. So if you have special interest in working in the infrastructure space, in the manufacturing space, there are tremendous opportunities. And there's so many of you in the diaspora who've got tremendous positions in many different foreign countries in these very aspects of business. So I would say that one of the biggest growth areas in India today is the infrastructure of India itself. And this is evidenced by the new T2 terminal in Bangalore, to new trains going across the railroads in India, to new convention centers like the new Bharat Mandapam that hosted the G20 event. You can see both the aspirations of India and the execution capability of India has increased to global standards. So that's one area. The second area is very obvious, that is tech. So in the tech space, I live in San Francisco and I've been working with India over the past 20 years in terms of taking delegations of executives and founders and entrepreneurs from Silicon Valley to India to educate, to inspire, to do workshops, to create entrepreneurship in the tech sector in India. Work very closely with NASSCOM, the leading IT organization, to host something in India called the NASSCOM Product Conclave. And that'll be happening again this November in Bangalore. So for those of you in tech, if you're looking at opportunities in India, I would encourage you to go to NASSCOM NPC. It gets over 2,000 delegates, lots of founders, venture capitalists, angel investors, large IT companies, all getting together to talk about tech. And of course, AI is going to be right front and center of conversations there. So the tech industry itself, there are many different opportunities. You can join large companies, Indian companies who want tech talent. You can join a lot of startups. You can also join the global development centers and global innovation centers of Fortune 500 companies. There are hundreds of those organizations that have been set up by the Fortune 500 itself. And a lot of venture capitalists have deployed so much capital in Indian companies. So there's tremendous opportunities in the tech sector as well. But there are many, many other areas you can look at too. There's biotech, there's healthcare, there's climate technology. And so what I would say is, for those of you who are in the diaspora, who have jobs overseas, if you want to look at India, make a visit, go meet people. And of course, today in the virtual world, you can have Zoom calls like we are now with anybody in India at any time. I think Indian companies and are eager and welcoming of the diaspora in terms of getting talent to help build India to a superpower in the decades to come. So I would say the future is bright, but of course there are bumps and challenges. If you are not an Indian citizen and you want to go back, there might be some challenges and issues in terms of how do you get back to India, what kind of visa you need, and so on and so forth. But that's where a lot of people like GTX and others can be helpful in making your transition smooth, helping you find opportunities in India as well. Now, the other thing about India that I want to talk about is we tend to look at the opportunities in the tier one cities, the Delhis, the Mumbais, the Bangalores, Chennai, Hyderabad, Pune, and so forth. But there are lots and lots of opportunities in tier two and tier three cities as well. So don't always look at going to a big city where you'll be a small fish. Maybe you should also consider going to a smaller city where you can be a big fish. And your quality of life will be better in these smaller cities. You'll have a bigger home. You'll have a lot more infrastructure at your disposal. So don't just be attracted to just the large cities. I think airports are being built in, I think, like a few hundred cities in India, and there's so many direct flights. Every time I go back to India, I'm surprised at the number of direct flights from city to city. And so I would say opportunities abound in India, and there is so much talent that is needed. Just think of this, right? India is going to go from 3 trillion to 10 trillion by 2030. Just look at the amount of growth that's going to happen in every sector, whether it's automotive, infrastructure, healthcare, you name it, there's huge growth. So take a look at this, but I don't want to keep going on and on about the opportunities or what Indiaspora can help and do. But really, if you want to take a look at Indiaspora itself, our website is indiaspora.org, indiaspora.org. You can subscribe to our newsletter. You can keep in touch with us. But I'd really, Avinash, at this time, like to open up the floor for questions. I do see some questions coming up here. So I would say I'm just going to start answering those for the moment. So one of the questions comes from Samira, who says, which sectors would you say require the diaspora skills the most? I would say the obvious one is technology, because there's been so much tech talent that has gone from India to Silicon Valley and many other places throughout the world. So I would say I would start with technology, and India's tech footprint keeps growing. India now has 800 million cell phones. India has so much of middle class that has grown up in the hundreds of millions now. So there's tremendous amount of opportunities, not just in coding and development, but also in marketing and many other areas. So I would say, Avinash, that the tech sector is the obvious one. But please tell me if there are any other questions that are coming up on our screen here.
So there's another question which talks about, I'm looking at transforming my career from Toronto to India in community initiatives. Is there a way that you could?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I forgot to mention the whole NGO sector in India. So this is another area that during COVID really came up in full force, where the NGO community stepped up where government could and helped millions of Indians during their tough times. So I would say that that's another sector that is now getting funded much more by wealthy Indians, by the CSR initiatives, and so forth. So I would say that that's another great place. There are many, many organizations. You can go to a website called give.do. They list hundreds of organizations that have been vetted by Give in terms of their, fiduciary capabilities and responsibilities and how well they do with their organizations. So I would say that's another great overlooked area is working with NGOs and communities, but that's a growing sector in India as well. I'm glad, Himali, you brought it up.
There's another question from Mr. Gil Epen. To make India work, one would think you need higher education. Here, India has not focused yet, right? I mean, what do you think of this is the question here, MR?
Yeah, I would say India is increasing its capability with good educational institutions. The obvious ones are IIT and IIMs and stuff, but they're few and far between. But recently, I had the opportunity to visit a college or university in Vellore in Tamil Nadu called Vellore Institute of Technology, and I was pleasantly surprised at the infrastructure they've built. They host 40,000 students at this one campus in Vellore. They have high-rise buildings as hostels. I'd never seen anything like this in India. So I would say education is a growing space. India needs a lot more good educational institutions that not only educate students but place them in really good, high-paying jobs. And I think that sector is increasing, but you have to really be careful in terms of the types of institutions, because India has tens of thousands of universities and colleges. I would say 90% of them have much to be desired. They might give you a diploma, but you won't get a job. So, India needs more of those high-end institutions that can scale, like the Vellore Institute of Technology. There are many, many good schools like that have 10, 20, 30,000 students that actually get employment. And so I would say if you can help in that sector, that's another thing I forgot to mention. There are 20,000 Indian American academics, professors of universities. Many of them are being welcomed back to India. So if you're a professor, you're an educator in the diaspora, I think that's another area, good area to go help India and make an impact. It's not just making money, but you'll be educating the talent for the next generation. So that's a great one to be in.
There's another question from Priya Abraham, who's asking about the G20. One of the key takeaways from the Indiaspora G20 forum is to facilitate knowledge transfer. Could you elaborate on some practical steps or strategies that were discussed to facilitate knowledge transfer between India and global community, especially in areas like finance, technology, healthcare, and the arts?
Great question. Again, the good thing is because of the pandemic, everybody has gone virtual. So Indiaspora is now planning on an academic diaspora conference in the United States to bring together a lot of the community leaders in academia to see how the diaspora can help in the academic front. And this can be done in many different ways. The different opportunities we're discussing, there are at least three big ones that come to mind. One is virtual sessions. So a lot of the academics here can do virtual education in India. That's the easy one that started happening during the pandemic and can continue. The second one is a lot of the faculty in universities across the world get summer time off. So they get 2 to 3 months where they don't teach. That might be a good time for them to physically visit India and stay and be hosted in an institution in India to transfer that knowledge. And the third one is to take a sabbatical. Universities give sabbaticals to professors, so take a year off and go live in India and teach in India. So there are many different opportunities, but we are going to be hosting an event next year to formally bring a lot of the diaspora academics to start putting these programs out formally so that the greater diaspora can benefit from that and help India.
Fantastic. While there are many questions, I think we'll take the last one, MR here. Again, it's Himali who's asking how to work with Government of India initiatives and work with ministry in education sectors. I think that's...
The government is pretty open. I think they see that the talent in the diaspora is huge. And so there are many different programs. The government has gone online in many areas now. So it's worth giving a shot to try and work with the bureaucrats and with the government ministries in terms of what can be done. But India also has a new education policy. So you need to take a look at that to see what the opportunities are. I think India is now more open to partnerships with foreign educational institutions and such. But you have to really look at the details to see the best form of engagement. One more thing, Avinash, I want to also add that I forgot is as the diaspora is coming back to India, I think there's still migration from India in many sectors. So I don't think that should be overlooked because India now has 1.4 billion and a lot of the Western world is aging, right? So when countries age, they need a lot of new services like geriatric care, senior citizen care, nursing. So there's a huge demand from Western countries for doctors, nurses, clinicians, and such. So I think as some of the diaspora comes back to India, there'll still be a flow from India overseas in terms of students, in the education space, students going overseas. They're going in record numbers now, not just to the US, but to Canada, UK, Australia, and so forth. But they're also nurses, doctors, and many other professions. So I think India is going to see this bilateral flow, if you will, of people going back and forth.
Absolutely. Indeed, MR. India is the place for all of us to, kind of watch out and be. Across sectors, like MR mentioned, there's been tremendous growth over the last, 5 years or a decade or so, and it will continue to be so in the next decade. And of course, we, like MR also mentioned, we will have talent moving both ways. We will have some talent which is, highly skilled, looking at opportunities in India, while we will also have talent moving to other parts of the world, to fill in the gaps that those countries have. Right. Thank you so much, MR, for this lovely, inspirational, message to all the fellow Indians across the globe about India and about some of the great stuff that Indiaspora is doing. we'd urge all of you to kind of support one another, Indians across the globe, and we look forward to continued community building of the diaspora. Thank you so much, MR, for being here on the show.
Anytime, Avinash, pleasure. Like I said, go to our website, get our newsletter, or hit me up on LinkedIn. Happy to help in any way I can.
Thank you very much, MR.